Hello and welcome to BBC News. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has denied the White House has a policy of regime change in Russia. It follows President Biden's speech on Saturday, in which he said of President Putin, "For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power." Well, Mr. Blinken, who's in Israel for an historic two-day summit, said that it's for the Russian people to decide. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeated his calls for more weapons and military support from the West. Our correspondent, Jonah Fisher, is in Lviv.
An angry statement from Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, last night. It came just after the city that I'm in now, Lviv, was targeted by Russian cruise missiles. In that statement, President Zelensky called on NATO countries to get their dusty weapons out of their storerooms and send them here to Ukraine. The West has, of course, already sent large amounts of anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles here to Ukraine, and there have been some foreigners who have, off their back, decided to come here and join the fight. Now, I went to the border with Poland to meet up with 3 British former servicemen who have decided to come here to Ukraine. They told me they'd come here determined to fight and to do their bit.
CJ is a dog handler from Norwich. Elliot works on building sites in Colchester. Kieran is a Brighton plumber.
I can't sit at home and watch what's going on and just carry on as usual.
Between them, the men have 19 years of experience with the British Army and have all served in Afghanistan. We catch up with them just after they cross the border from Poland into Ukraine.
We met at the airport and it's all been, we've known each other for a lot longer than 24 hours.
Having taken a £20 flight to Poland, they'd slept overnight outside a railway station. CJ and Elliot had told their families where they were going. Kieran, a father of 4, had not.
I didn't tell the mums, no. I didn't even tell my mum.
What brought them together was a desire to do something, anything, to help Ukraine.
You're not fighting in someone else's street. Does it end up on yours? Does it end up, do my kids become a target? Do my mates' kids?
I'll do anything. I'm a trained infantry soldier. I'll help out wherever I can, in the field, anywhere, from back to front.
From the border, it's 50 miles and a bus ride to Lviv, the biggest city in the west.
These guys are now going to meet up with the Ukrainian authorities to see if they want to sign up with the Foreign Legion here. If they don't, there may be a more direct route to the front line. They've been speaking with other British ex-soldiers who are already there. They may be able to link up directly with them to get where the fighting is.
Joining this war, if you're a serving British soldier, is illegal. But for others, it's more of a grey area. CJ, Kieran and Elliot say they were pulled aside by the police for a chat as they left the UK, but then allowed to travel on.
My name is Julia, and what are your names?
Julia is returning from the border, having helped her daughter to cross.
We've come to join the Legion to help fight if need be, to help fight the Russians.
You are soldiers, you are fighters?
Yeah, we're ex-army.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much that you have come here to help our Ukrainian soldiers. Also, they are very brave, very brave.
Lviv and the railway station is the volunteers' next stop. There are now serious decisions to be made about where and what comes next.
What would you say to people in the UK who say you guys are just looking for the excitement of war?
There is no excitement to war. It's not nice. It's not pleasant. We've seen it. There's nothing nice about dead kids at the side of the road.
And are you prepared to die here?
Absolutely.
And with that, CJ, Kieran and Elliot marched off. British boys in Putin's war.
And that report from Jonah Fisher there. Now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Western governments to supply planes, tanks and missile defence systems to Ukraine to help them fight Russian forces. In an impassioned late-night video address, he said that heavy weapons which could defend freedom in Europe were instead gathering dust in stockpiles. Well, earlier I spoke to Dr. Patrick Bury, a former British Army captain and NATO analyst, and I asked him if the West really has these stockpiles.
Well, in a nutshell, it's very evocative imagery. It does, yes. You know, for example, the UK would keep some of its tanks back. It would also have aircraft that it is not using operationally. For example, you know, and missile defense systems. The US is particularly important there because it actually bought a lot of old Soviet era stuff to see how they worked. And that is really what the Ukrainians are used to using. And so that's what they need. Some of the British tanks, for example, if they had them in the stockpiles or to offer them, would need completely new training for the Ukrainians. So really it's about Russian kit. Who's got Russian kit? And if we think about that in terms of NATO, it's often the countries on the eastern flank and the former Warsaw Pact countries that have some of the kit. What are the Ukrainians looking for? They've asked for tanks. You know, they're used to operating the T-64 tank, is sort of quite an old one that's been updated a little bit, and also the T-72, lesser the T-80. So their tanks are potentially countries like Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria may have, but they would be using some of those, especially the more newer variants. And then also they've looked for air defense systems and actually anti-ship systems too, missile systems. And again, this is where the US would probably come in. We know that they've been getting a lot of Stingers, which are effective at low altitudes. But what the Ukrainians are looking for is the sort of the next level up, the SA-8s and the S-300s, which have, you know, longer range and are capable of faster targets as well.
Okay. So, Dr. Bury, that is their wish list. Now, we've already learned, haven't we, with Poland, I mean, they've been more than willing to supply some planes that Ukraine said that they could use, but they haven't been able to because of the implications of NATO entering the conflict. What can they supply Ukraine with? You're saying that there is kit there, so why haven't they handed it over? Why not?
Well, I think the key thing is defensive. You know, this has been a war of annexation by Russia, an invasion of Ukraine, as we all know, and so NATO's been very careful to calibrate their response as being defensive only, and that comes down to kind of what are the weapons capabilities. So, like, if you're giving a country anti-tank missiles and you're giving them handheld anti-aircraft missiles, it's quite hard then to launch an offensive with those. It's not impossible, but they're generally seen as defensive weapons. The big sort of escalatory risk with giving a country ground attack air and fighters like that is that potentially, and we did see the Ukrainian Air Force in the early days of the campaign actually attack inside Russia, as far as I'm aware. So the danger is that could actually be perceived as more offensive by Russia. Now, it's not unprecedented that countries would supply other countries in a time of war by proxy with jets, for example. It's happened before, and there hasn't been a massive escalation, but it does run the risk of it. And certainly it seems that the West, US, NATO, sort of transatlantic countries are much more reticent to do that than some of the Eastern countries who are closer to the fight.